Without further ado, I'd like to introduce first Karen Rossi is a production manager for Answers Magazine, a publication by the Council on Aging. And Karen is also the program manager for the Senior Protection Program, also a program through the Council on Aging. And then we have Morgan Paget, who's a staff attorney at the Public Law Center in Orange County, California. This is a pro bono law firm. And we're so grateful you ladies are joining us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
You can get started and share your screen.
Alrighty.
And what she say? Hi, Georgetown. Hi, Denver. Hi, Orlando. Did see some California folks. They are in California, but a lot of this is for across United States.
Are you able to see me? See my
Not
slides?
yet.
Okay,
Not
perfect.
yet.
Oh, no.
No,
Oh.
not yet.
Okay, that's not good. Hold on.
Hi, Tennessee. Technology is wonderful when it works.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's. So you're not picking that up. All right, hold on.
Nope, I'm still seeing all of us.
Okay, let's go back.
So I'm seeing smiling faces at least.
Right.
Mr. Patel says, I can see you, but we don't see your slides.
All right. Bear with me a minute. Sometimes this is a little
problem.
challenging. See, it's showing that I'm.
You see it, but we're not seeing it. Are you sharing your screen? There we go.
All right.
There we
Now,
go. Perfect.
hang on, like everything known to man just opened up. Okay. So we are seeing it now, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
But if you want to start it on the slideshow, there we go. Because right now we kind of see everything. Perfect.
Hang on, I've got a closed caption blocking me from the beginning. There we go. Maybe. There we go.
There we go. Thank you.
All righty. Let me know when we're ready. Oops. Hello. There we go.
Good to go. And like I said, I will be monitoring the chat. So if questions come up as Karen and Morgan are talking, just put them in the chat and I'll take care of it. And I'll ask them at the end.
All righty. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Morgan and I are from Orange County, California. So some of the information we're going to talk about might be a little bit more specific to California, but what is not specific to California is the fact that scams are now at an all-time high. Financial fraud definitely targets everyone. It doesn't matter what your age is. And what we're beginning to see from the FBI is that crimes that occur on the internet or on your phone or your text messaging or just generally scamming people have become so great that they are now the third largest economy in the world. So today we're going to talk about how to protect your assets and why it's important to do so. So first we'll talk a little bit about the Council on Aging. I don't know that you have an organization like us. There is an Office on Aging, I believe, in almost every state. So we are funded by them, but we are not actually a part of them. We're a separate entity. Then we're going to talk about what is financial wellness? Why do you need it? We'll talk a little bit about capacity. Capacity is our ability to be autonomous and make decisions for ourselves. And then we'll talk a little bit about the California state law. I think a lot of laws are very similar, but they could also be a little different. We'll talk about what we call the capacity trap. And then Morgan will talk about planning, what you need, what kind of documents you should have in place, what the benefit of doing so is, how do you consider various types of people when you're trying to determine who will make decisions for you when perhaps you can't any longer. And then we'll talk about the importance of securing your assets from fraud, how important it is to make sure the person or people that you have selected to make decisions for you when you can no longer make them are aware of it and they know where your plan is. And then we'll open up to questions. So very quickly, we have 7 programs at the Council on Aging. It is an agency that offers everything at no charge. We're funded primarily by grants, national as well as state and very specific county grants. We carry the Ombudsman program, which are the state mandated ombudsmen whose responsibilities it is to advocate for all of the residents in a California state licensed facility. So that would be somebody that maybe lives in a care facility, a memory care facility, an independent active living facility or residence. We have a very large 5-county Medicare program we call HICAP, and this is free services, especially during enrollment. I'm sure every state has something. They're often called SHIP, S-H-I-P. And this allows anybody who is receiving Medicare to be able to have their coverage evaluated at no charge and have something offered to them that would basically be a list of all the organizations that might offer something in an unbiased manner, so you can select what's best for you. My program is the Senior Protection Program. We focus mostly on education, on fraud, financial fraud, and also on scams and learning how to recognize them. What do you do if you think you're a target, or if you think you've been a victim? How do you report it? Why should you report it? Then we go on to talk about some of the legal laws in California, different presentation than this. And then the financial one, which we're doing today, where we talk about why it's important to protect your financial assets and how you protect them, the documents required to do so. We have a couple of organization and wellness programs. One is a friendly visitor, one is a reconnect. These are programs that are run primarily by social workers. And these are people who are isolated and need some kind of interaction or need to be reconnected to the community. And we have 2 different programs for these. Then our education and outreach. We have a Christmas program where we have a number of different organizations in the county that purchase and donate Christmas gifts and holiday gifts to all of the residents that the ombudsman identify who would either not have anyone visiting them or would maybe be forgotten at the holiday. And then we have a 3-week period where we wrap over 5,000 gifts and have all of them distributed out to these facilities. And then Answers, it was mentioned in the beginning, this is a publication of the County of Orange and the Council on Aging in Southern California, very specific to different types of services that are available to people who are 60 and over or disabled. We serve about 290,000 seniors annually in the County of Orange. We have 80 employees. We have 4.6 million in revenue, the majority coming from government funding, but then the rest comes from individuals, foundations, and corporations. Morgan?
So hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for having us today. I just want to give a shout out to the people in the Carolinas. I have family in South Carolina, so it's lovely to see people from all over the country. So this is a little bit of information about the Public Law Center. We have several different units of areas that we focus on. So we have a family law unit, a housing unit, a health unit, an immigration unit, a consumer law unit. That's where I am. That's where I focus my practice. This unit includes our elder justice grant. So things like this and helping folks set up estate plans, defending people that are suffering from elder financial abuse. This is all housed within our consumer law unit. We also have a veterans unit as well as a small business unit, which helps small businesses establish LLCs and things like that. We do focus our services on Orange County, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about what these various units do. Most nonprofits, though, are located all throughout the country. So if you are seeking services that look something like this, generally nonprofits do focus on these same sorts of issues overall. So please, reach out to a local nonprofit in your county to get more information. And if you do happen to be based in Orange County, please feel free to reach out to me if you want a little bit more information about the Public Law Center. This is some information about our nonprofit. So we do have about 40 staff attorneys here, and we work with a lot of volunteers. A little different from some regular nonprofits is that we are really a pro bono law firm. So it's one of our main goals to work with private law attorneys that come and volunteer their time with us to serve pro bono. So to work on cases for free. And that really allows us to expand our capacity and help as many people as possible. And so these are some of our stats to show how utilizing pro bono hours allows us to reach more people. So annually, we have over 6,500 hours of pro bono time that these attorneys come and volunteer with us, and we're able to help over 4,500 cases each year. And in the year of 2019, we assisted over 500 adults over the age of 60. And I'll bounce it back to Karen.
Thank you, Morgan. So what we're going to talk about today is financial wellness and understanding what does that actually mean. So a common understanding is improving your relationship with money. And how do you do that? Throughout our lives, we work really hard. We attempt to communicate or to accumulate wealth. And we try to invest and have retirement programs and pensions and things that will carry us through the rest of our lives. But financial wellness really requires a comprehensive financial plan that covers not only your wealth accumulation, but what do you do with that information, and how does that emotionally and physically affect you in the event that it can be accessed incorrectly, you can be scammed, you can be a victim of fraud. So the capacity trap is something in my business, I receive a lot of calls from people who believe that they have been defrauded, or they think they know someone who has, or they're aware of something that might be a new scam. And the majority of the time, we find that the people who are targeted are usually in what we call the capacity trap area. This is the area where you have the ability to make decisions about some things, but you maybe don't have the ability to make decisions about others. In the state of California, we have our capacity presumed, which means I have capacity until I'm either conserved by the court, or someone in my family petitions the court to conserve me because I can't make decisions for myself any longer. And that may change a little bit. I think it's called guardianships in other states, but that may change a little bit from state to state. But there is a period, or there is an area on the spectrum between when I can maybe not make decisions about one thing, but I can surely make decisions about a lot of others, and where I cannot make decisions at all. And in that area is what we call the capacity trap, where people are vulnerable, where people can make bad decisions and not realize it. So when we talk about financial capacity, we talk about our ability to manage our money and our assets that serve us best and stay with us throughout our lives. Diminished financial capacity is when we don't have the ability to make these decisions for ourselves anymore. And that creates the vulnerability that a lot of people have, or that is targeted by the perpetrators of financial fraud and scams. And there are all types of different financial abuse scenarios. The vast majority of them also include other kinds of abuse. So as I said, in the state of California, we are all presumed to have capacity, which is our autonomy and ability to make decisions for ourselves about our finances, about our healthcare, about literally everything in our lives. It's very complicated. It's beneficial because it preserves our right to have self-determination. It's harmful because, as I said, in that capacity trap portion of the spectrum, I can make really bad decisions. I can make decisions that are good or bad about my life, about my property, about assets, until a court or someone else petitions the court and they step forward to say, Karen no longer has capacity to make these decisions. We need to find someone to make them for her. This capacity trap area, it's the increased area of vulnerability or manipulation. It makes it easy for people to scam people who fall into this category out of money or out of property. So very similar to an autistic spectrum, we see a capacity spectrum. So on one side, we have the very high functioning, very able to do all your activities of daily living and able to go to work and able to basically live a very normal life, all the way to the other side where you have no capacity to act for yourself or no ability to take care of yourself. Well, when we talk about capacity or cognitive ability, it's the same thing. It's a very similar spectrum. So on one side, I might not be able to make good decisions about finances, but I sure do know where I like to live, and I know who I like to be around. I know what things are mine. I know who I want my things to go to. I know what I like to eat or where I like to eat, and I know if I like to go out for a walk. but maybe I can't make good financial decisions for myself any longer. So I'm falling into what they call that capacity trap, because as I lose more and more of my ability to make decisions, I become more and more vulnerable to perpetrators. So capacity is most often the center of the financial abuse allegations that we hear a lot about. And obtaining a legal determination of capacity is a really long and drawn out process. It's very costly if you're trying to conserve someone. I know in the state of California, I believe I've heard it's up to like now anywhere from 8 to 12 months before a hearing actually can occur. That would be what other states, we call it conservatorship here. I believe it's called guardianship in other states. And it's a very costly emotional and financial long haul to go through. So how do we avoid falling into this? One of the things that we suggest is practice financial wellness. Learn how to manage and protect the things you've worked your entire life for. I'm going to turn this back over to Morgan to talk about the legal side of things.
So when we talk about financial wellness and protecting yourself and your assets, these are the three documents that we really focus on. So a will and a trust, and this is how you're going to be able to distribute your assets. A power of attorney, and this is how you're going to be able to manage your property, assets, financial care, personal care. Power of attorneys are very flexible, so you can really use them in a variety of ways. And then your advanced healthcare directive, which is very focused on your medical care. And we'll go into each of these now. So the first thing is a will or a trust. So a will is something that distributes your assets after you pass away. Different from a trust. A trust is going to be something that you're able to manage during your lifetime, and then also can be used to manage your assets after you pass away. The benefit of a trust is there's several reasons for this. One is that even if you have a will, it still has to go through probate court. And for those of you that have heard of all the terrors of probate court, mostly it's that it's really expensive and that it takes a long time. So your beneficiaries are having to deal with this court process, and it's eating up any assets that you might have in the meantime. A trust gets to avoid probate altogether, because in a trust, you designate somebody to distribute your assets. So in other words, the court has to still make these determinations, but oh, sorry, I'll try to speak up a bit louder. Please let me know if anyone's still having trouble hearing me. I'm in my office, so I'm trying not to shout too loud. Let me turn up my volume too. Okay. And so a trust, you're actually designating somebody during your life to distribute those assets after you pass, which allows you to avoid probate court. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so then power of attorney. So a power of attorney can be granted to help with your financial decisions, and it can help you, let's see. So this is focused on financial decisions for right now. So if you want somebody to help manage your bank account, manage your payments, make sure that you're making your automated payments on time, help you with sort of these day-to-day necessities, you can make somebody your power of attorney just specifically for finances. Keep in mind, it doesn't have to be a power of attorney for every decision that you make in your life. It just can be focused on one particular thing. I often recommend that if people have various financial institutions that they're part of, you go to that financial institution to receive their personal power of attorney. In California, we have documents that are on the state website that you can use, but oftentimes banks like to have their specific forms filled out, and they won't honor a generic power of attorney form. So I always recommend that you visit your financial institution for those specific documents. Also, please keep in mind that for power of attorneys, you decide when they come into effect. I can decide today I want to name somebody a power of attorney that's going to help me with my finances, or I can say what's called a springing power of attorney. That means that upon a triggering action, if I go and get in a car accident right now and I'm incapacitated in the hospital, then that power of attorney springs into action. And that person can then help me from there on out. So when you're deciding who I want to name this power of attorney, or also known as an agent, we can use these terms interchangeably for the point of this conversation. We really encourage you to think about somebody that you trust in your life. Power of attorneys can be very helpful, but they can also have a double-edged sword effect. You're essentially giving somebody power to make decisions for you and oftentimes to have access to your finances. And so if you don't choose somebody that you really trust, that you know is going to have your best interest at heart, we often see people take advantage of that power and end up taking money out of your bank account. So this is why we recommend that the person that you trust is financially sound on their own to lessen that temptation to dip into your finances. We also recommend that you avoid high conflict personalities. So you don't have to just choose one power of attorney. You can name somebody power of attorney over your finances, somebody else power of attorney over your healthcare. It can be different. And when you have different people, though, that are making decisions for you, you want to make sure that they're on the same page, that they're not clashing with each other, and that they understand that the purpose, their function is to do what's in the best interest for you and not what they think is in the best interest. Also, you want to make sure that they understand those responsibilities, that they know what it is that you're asking them to do, and that they fully are on board with making those decisions for you. Like when we talk about these power of attorneys and we say they're a fiduciary. So that just means that their job is to act in your best interest. Oftentimes people come to me and they think they have their own idea of what's in the best interest of an older sibling or a parent or a grandparent. And that's not the job, right? It's what if I was standing in the shoes of this person, what do they think is in their best interest? So these agents can also help you retain records. They should always stay in contact with you about anything that's going on that they're helping you with. And then you're really tasking them to provide whatever the care is that you're designating them to do, whether it's where you will live, hiring maybe a healthcare person to live in home with you. And we've talked about managing your finances. So paying your bills, paying your taxes, writing checks, things like that. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat. And we can read these at the end, but I should have said in the beginning, this is all geared towards California. I think in general, these are pretty broad concepts, so they should be generally construed as the same across the states. But if you are looking into using any of these documents or creating estate plans, please consult with an attorney in your state. Okay, so what is an advanced healthcare directive? Most people do have these and are becoming familiar with these. They've been pretty popular for a couple decades now. But as a reminder, this is something that really lays out what you want to have happen to you should you not be able to make a decision during that time. And so you can also designate somebody to make sure that those wishes are followed. So this grants another person power to make those medical decisions for you. And it gives that trusted power to this person should you not be able to do so. We always recommend, again, that you have these on file with your doctors, healthcare providers, if you're able to upload them online so that they're available no matter what hospital you go to. That's our recommendation. It can get tricky if something happens in an emergency, you're taken to one hospital, and that's not your primary hospital. And so trying to have copies of these on you or with these trusted people can be beneficial. So healthcare decisions. You're agreeing to what sort of like medications, testing, treatments, end of care life, all these sorts of things that you might not be able to make decisions about when the time comes. So in addition to us encouraging these plans for your own autonomy and your own financial well-being, but it's also just financial wellness of your estate, of the beneficiaries that you're leaving behind, and in order to lessen that stress and anxiety, not only on you, but also on your loved ones. For any of us that have had to take care of somebody or somebody's assets once they've passed, especially if there's a lot of different players involved, it can be incredibly stressful. So anything that we can try to do to have that financial well-being ahead of time is helpful. So this basically is just what I said in a nice little slide. We try to ease that anxiety for those that love us and support us, and also make sure that what is happening to ourselves and to our assets is what we want. And that's sort of the point of all of these documents and having conversations like this with the people around you. So caregivers, planning for yourself can help avoid using someone else's assets for your own needs. We do see instances where we have a trusted person, a caregiver that we've designated to either live in our homes or help us. And that person ends up being, they end up being the person that is committing the financial abuse. So whether it's sort of the examples that we gave before, where they've been given power to buy things for you, and then now they're buying their own things at the same time at the grocery store. Or they're supposed to be making sure that you're getting your medicine on time and things like this. And then they're either not doing that, maybe there's some neglect going on. And so we just want to make sure that you have people in your life that are aware of what's going on, and that there's clear records that are being kept. And if you have a licensed healthcare professional that's coming in, making sure that they're being paid. A lot of times if it's through a licensure, then that comes with it. There's a payroll service and all of that. But sometimes if it's just a family member or a friend that's just coming in as a caregiver, you want to make sure that maybe there is a payroll set up so that there's not this commingling of funds that's going on. Karen, do you have anything to add to that particular slide?
I know in the state of California, we have a distinction between licensed caregivers and just friends or family. I will say that in California, we highly recommend a licensed caregiver, because in the event that you might have some kind of financial fraud going on or any type of abuse, you have recourse. When you hire the person down the street or somebody who's a friend of a friend, or even oftentimes family members that we see in some of these cases, you have a difficult time with recourse. We generally recommend that if you need a caregiver, you go to a licensed agency and get a caregiver from them. It gives you one, peace of mind. Two, if something does happen, you have very clear recourse. However, that's not to say that people who are family are not some of the best caregivers that we have out there. It all goes back to what Morgan was saying about if they're financially fine on their own, if they're secure, if you have family members that fight with each other, sometimes it's a lot easier to hire a third party to care for your loved one. And sometimes too, we see a lot of dysfunctional families where the brother or the sister, or even the blended family siblings, are all arguing over what is best for mom or for the stepdad or vice versa. So my one takeaway from this is, if you are going to hire someone, make sure you know who they are, and make sure that if it is a licensed facility, just go through and check to make sure there are no complaints or disciplinary actions against them. I believe every state has a licensing website, so you should be able to go in and identify the agencies that are licensed, and also the caregivers within them should be licensed as well.
Thank you. So securing your assets from fraud, financial wellness benefits of planning. Okay, so financial wellness benefits of planning: decreased vulnerability, is the main goal that we are trying to achieve here. So the research indicates that people with dementia are at a greater risk of elder abuse. Approximately 5.1 million Americans over 65 have some kind of dementia, and approximately 50% of all people over 85 have Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Close to 50% of people with dementia experience some kind of abuse, and 47 participants in a 2010 study on dementia and abuse were found to be mistreated by caregivers. So this all goes back to what we've been talking about. Have the financial plan. If you are working with caregivers, make sure that they're licensed or there's some sort of oversight as far as what's going on with them. All right, and so time to share. One of the biggest, I won't say an issue, but one of the biggest things that comes up is that you designate folks to have this important power, right? And they don't understand what the full function of it is. We just implore you to share these decisions that you're making with the people around you that are supporting you. We've had folks come in that say, oh, my brother named me a power of attorney, and then he named me the beneficiary to distribute his estate, and I had no idea that he gave me these powers. And then this person is left with not really knowing what to do, lives in another state, and it's really difficult to carry out those wishes. So please, if you're designating somebody as a power of attorney, have the conversation with them. Make sure that they know exactly what it is that they want you to do. In California, there are there's a specific list of things that you can designate a power of attorney to do, and you can choose which of those you want to grant power in that person to have. You don't have to choose them all, or you can choose them all, but just make sure that that person knows what it is that you want them to do for you and what you don't want them to do for you. Again, going back to disagreements in the family, especially when it comes to caretaking, a lot of people in your family generally have different ideas about what is the best course of action. So have these conversations ahead of time and make sure that everybody knows what your particular wishes are. These are very common examples that we see. Sale of a childhood home. This comes up all the time. Children are very emotionally tied to the home that they grew up in. So making sure that there's a clear plan of action as far as what to do with homes, sale of family vacations, and then distribution of assets as well. There are a lot of emotionally charged conversations when it comes to these things. So planning ahead, while not foolproof, may help you stay in control of your finances and avoid the capacity trap, even in the face of diminished financial capacity. So to keep in mind, things like making an estate plan, especially if it's a relatively basic as far as your property and assets, like your real property assets, things like that, you don't have to have a very high functioning level of capacity. You just have to know who your people are and what your things are and be able to name who you want them to go to. So even folks that have already been diagnosed with dementia, even early stages of Alzheimer's, they can still make these decisions. You know, everyone, like we talked about earlier, the spectrum of capacity, it's not all or nothing from one day to the next. So if there's moments of clarity, you're able to have these conversations. There's people around you that can have these conversations. It's okay to still try to do some of this planning, even if some of these things have already started to occur. Yep, and there we go.
So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, and we can entertain any of the questions that might come up.
You have some questions, which is good always. Someone asked if you could comment on the fine print, because a lot of times the printed document sent to seniors, it's not in a large font. So you kind of can't see it. And yet you're like, I know it's important because it's kind of the fine print, and that's often where they put stuff. But without getting out a magnifying glass, can you kind of comment on that?
I think that's more of a Morgan question. One thing I do know is there's an ADA requirement that documents that are provided specifically for older people should be in at least an 11-point font. I don't know how that does or doesn't apply to the fine print that you find in a lot of legal documents. Morgan, do you have any ideas?
I would say that this question is really, I think, dependent on what type of document that you're referring to. So for instance, if it's from a law office, if I have somebody that I know has some visual impairments, I mean, I'll blow that up to 2436 font and just send over pages of documents as big as the person needs it. But if this is sort of a like a routine document, maybe like an app on your phone that you're downloading, I don't know how to avoid that without a magnifying glass or blowing it up on a screen. But if it's definitely something that's more personalized, I would say to reach out and ask them to send you something in a bigger font.
And then we had a question. Could you comment on the Medicaid 5-year look back period?
I cannot. This is not something that I focus on. I know for Council on Aging, there is a program that helps with Medicaid and Medi-Cal. Karen, I'll let you speak on that. But as far as Medicaid generally, I would reach out to a local nonprofit in your county. Oftentimes there is a health unit that can shed some light on this.
Yeah, I would agree with what she said. I would also say, like in California, we have the group called HiCap. A lot of the other states will have very similar organizations that are nonprofit, very non-biased, unbiased, and they will work directly with you on terms of Medicare and Medicaid. My thought at that point would be most of the programs that I have seen that are not California programs are found under something called SHIP, S-H-I-P. So you might want to just Google and see if you have an unbiased free Medicare Medi-Cal program for a consulting program, because you don't want to get caught up in accidentally thinking that you're talking to someone who's unbiased, but you're really talking to like a Medicare broker. That's one of the reasons why a lot of the states have set up these HiCap and SHIP programs.
I will just briefly comment on it. Just to give you an idea though, because as a social worker, I understand the reason Medicaid does this 5-year look back is because they don't want you to just give a bunch of your money away so that you can qualify for Medicaid. And so they do want to see that it's being used to take care of yourselves and everything. It's not just like you had all this money and you said, I'm going to give it to my kids so that this way I can qualify for Medicaid. So that really is the thinking, the thought process behind it. We have a good question about, is identity theft insurance a good idea for seniors?
That is a very good idea. It's a very good question. My thought would be, there's another presentation we do where we talk a lot about scams and identity theft. The first thing I would do if I were anybody is Google yourself. Find out what information about you is actually out there. It is rather frightening. Then keep in mind, when people call you or email you or text you, or even sometimes knock on your door in person, they're asking for specific pieces of personal or financial information. It fills in the puzzle for them so that now they have the ability to steal your identity. Typically, the common thief or the common perpetrator only needs 1 or 2 more pieces of personal information to steal your identity. So does identity theft insurance? Honestly, I don't know. You would really have to look into that. It's not something that we suggest on a regular basis. More what we suggest is having your documents, having your legal documents in place, being very careful about not answering calls coming in, even if it looks like it's from somebody important. A lot of times it's not. If you did not initiate the call, don't pick it up. If you're getting emails, look at the extension of those emails. If you're seeing something that's in like a combination of alphanumeric that you can't pronounce, nobody makes up an email address like that. Everybody wants one you can remember. So if you see something like that, chances are good that it is not legitimate. The other thing is, if you find that you've actually answered the phone or responded to the email and you realize that you might have gotten yourself in a little trouble, the first thing you want to do on your computer, turn your computer off. Don't wipe out the hard drive because you're going to need it for forensics later, but turn your computer off. it will stop whatever they're doing in its tracks. Then you want to report it. Reporting is really important. You know, if I know in the state of California, the very first place we go to report is the Adult Protective Services Organization, and they then will initiate an investigation. I also highly recommend you call your local police department or local law enforcement. Every one of them has some kind of an elder abuse type of unit or elder financial abuse kind of unit. The other thing that's important to recognize, typically when you're dealing with any of these kinds of, they used to call them internet crimes, cyber crimes. The FBI changes the name pretty regularly, but there is an FBI site called ic3.gov. That is where you can report any kind of identity theft, because typically identity theft is across state lines, and very often it's outside the country. When you begin noticing money is disappearing, or someone has accessed your credit cards or accessed your bank accounts, if it's not someone who is like a caregiver, a family member, something like that, which 66% of them usually are, there is that window of opportunity for people who don't even know you that can access information. So identity theft insurance, I would really look into that to determine what do other people think. And I would actually ask, if you have financial advisors, ask them. I am a fiduciary. It's not something that we really talk very much about. I don't have an opinion one way or another. I don't feel like I know enough about it, but I do know a lot about protecting your own personal data. Don't give it to anybody. It's yours. It's the most important personal information you have. It is more important than your money. They don't have your personal information, they cannot access your money. So I hope that answered the question, kind of.
Someone asked if you could please define capacity trap again.
Okay, capacity is our ability to make decisions for ourselves. So cognitively, I can make decisions for anything in my life in terms of finances, healthcare, where I live, what I eat, if I drive, things like that. In the state of California, it's presumed that I have it until somebody decides to either petition the court for my conservatorship because I'm a danger to myself and others, or I'm at the point where I'm not capable of doing anything and the court will step in and conserve me. Your capacity trap is that area between when I can still make really good decisions for myself, an attorney is going to recognize that I have capacity. Because if attorneys recognize that maybe you don't know what document you're signing or you don't understand what's happening, they have the option to step away and say, "Ooh, I don't think she has capacity to sign this. We cannot do a legal document." I know Morgan always checks with whoever her clients are, and she checks to make sure that they have capacity to sign documents. One of the things that happens is between that time where I lose capacity to make decisions or good decisions for myself, and I'm vulnerable, and an undue influence can easily get me to sign things because I don't know what I'm signing or I don't understand, to the point where someone petitions the court and my ability, my autonomy is taken away from me. That's the capacity trap. If I haven't planned for someone to make decisions for me before I can't do it anymore, you're not going to be able to have anybody sign or do a legal document for you because you don't have the capacity to understand what you're doing. And an attorney, most attorneys, we do see attorneys who do this, and I typically find it in more fraud cases than anything else, but there are some attorneys that will do legal documents for people recognizing that they don't have capacity. That I don't believe that is something that a good attorney would ever do. I'm pretty sure it's against the law. At least I know in the state of California, you're not supposed to do it. So capacity trap, the area between when I can't make decisions for myself anymore and I'm conserved by either a family member or the court. If I have not in that area prior to not being able to make my decisions, I haven't put a power of attorney in place or an advanced healthcare directive in place or a will or a trust. At that point, I may not be able to do those things anymore. And that's that trap you get caught in when you can't protect yourself. It's very complicated. I'm trying to make it a little easier, but it's just very complicated.
Thank you though for explaining it again, because you gave a very good overview. You explained it well.
Oh, thanks.
Someone asked if you could briefly explain Q-tip trusts, like
Yes.
advantages or disadvantages, tax implications.
So I see some of these questions specific to trust in the chat, and I'm going to not answer these, and I'll tell you why. Trusts are complex, and in my practice, because we're a nonprofit, I mostly work with low income populations where I don't deal with a lot of like property transfers. And so things like a Q-tip trust, you're transferring property between spouses. The same thing with putting your home in a trust and things like that. So I'm really going to recommend that you speak to an attorney that works with primarily trusts and sort of more complex issues. If you are in Orange County, please still reach out, and we can try to place you with one of our pro bono attorneys that focuses their practice on these trust laws. But just because I don't have that expertise, and I don't want to say something that's incorrect, so I'm not gonna answer those questions about trust today.
Oh, the FBI website again. I just happened to see that. This is for internet crime, and it would be I, like the letter I, C like Charlie, 9 like the number 9. I'm sorry, 3 like the number 3. IC3.gov, G-O-V, IC3.gov. And that's where you report these kinds of things. Now, if you think that you are a victim of some type of fraud, there should be a local FBI deputy agent in your area or in your county that you should be able to call, and you should be able to file a report directly with them. Typically, you would be referred to them by the local police department or the sheriff's department, depending on what your situation might be. But most of your internet crime and most of the social media crimes, the different things that we see happen regularly, are FBI jurisdictions.
Talk about social media crimes. Are you also, I've never answered them, but I've seen where friends are like, oh, this is just fun. And then somebody like posts that they're like, you shouldn't answer those questions, because a lot of those questions are security questions, but it just seems so innocent. Like, what was your first car? And then I'm like, that is a question I've seen as a security question. And it just seems so innocent.
My suggestion on social media is to make sure you privatize it. If you're doing anything that is Facebook or Instagram, make sure that you know who's accessing the information. Privatize it to the people you know, because one of the things that happens with the perpetrators is that they will literally troll social media sites looking for people who have not secured their information or secured their site. And so they'll pretend to be someone they're not. They're being an imposter. And that's how like a lot of the romance scam starts. That's how they have access to voices. A lot of you have probably heard of AI, where they can replicate a voice in 5 seconds. They get this from social media. They get people's voices. They get pictures of people. The FBI is working diligently in trying to control this. But the fact is that you have a lot of bad people out there perpetrating crime. Doesn't get to be the biggest economy in the world with lots of churchgoers. So my suggestion on social media is make sure it's privatized, make sure you know who's accessing it. Don't just accept a friend if you don't know who they are. And honestly, if you're not really good technically when it comes to utilizing your phone or utilizing the internet, ask for help. Be careful, because it's very easy to wade into water and not realize there's sharks right there.
Nick did point out, he said a good tip is try to avoid using your voice to answer yes to questions from unknown persons. So thank you.
Yeah, the other thing is learn to say hello in a totally different manner. If you think that it's a fraudulent call, I do this a lot because I receive calls from all over the place. And a lot of times I don't know if they're imposter calls, fraud calls, scam calls, or just somebody contacting me in a business environment. So if it looks like it could be a scam call, I might just answer it saying I'm the DA's office, or I might answer it with a really weird accent. I very rarely say hello. If they, like, there's one call that comes in a lot. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? They're just waiting for you to say yes. And you have to think kind of quickly on your feet, because your first reaction is, well, yeah, I can hear you. Well, they're going to take that yes, and they're going to find all different ways to reproduce it and utilize it in a fraudulent or scam kind of way. So that is a very good suggestion. Don't say yes, find another way to say it, find different ways to say hello or answer your phone. And if you think this isn't a call you should be answering, let it go to voicemail. If it's important, they'll leave a message. And if it's a scammer, they typically don't leave a message.
And David asks, is it good to clear your search history frequently?
I've heard yes and no. I think it just a lot of times depends on who has access to your computer. One of the top crimes that we see right now with fraud and scams is the internet crime of people getting these like Microsoft or Amazon kind of access into your computer. Like your computer screen will start flashing and it's Microsoft, there's something wrong, call us now. That's a scam. Microsoft is not going to call you. They're not going to go into your computer. Amazon doesn't have enough people to deliver packages. They're not going to make a phone call to you or text you to tell you that somebody just bought an $800 computer on your account. There's a lot of fraudulent things that happen that if you think a little bit more about, did I contact them? Should I be expecting this call? Does your search history have anything to do with that? I think more, be careful where you go when you're going online. Be careful what information you share, because keep in mind, anything you put out there is being collected. And just because you might delete it, it still lives in the cloud. Everything lives in the cloud. So you can delete emails, you can delete voicemails, you can delete photographs, text messages, everything lives in the cloud. It is only deleted on your phone or on your computer. So really important to be careful. Where do you go? Even if you just look at some of these discussions when they talk about a person who is suspected of perpetrating a crime, and they'll go back and they'll look at their search history. I guarantee you these people deleted their search history. It's still there. So just be really careful where you go, who you share information with, what information you put out there, what types of questions people are asking you. Sometimes we just have to be very suspicious, which is very unfortunate, but we have to be suspicious because every one of us is a target. And you never know who the person is that's going to target you and when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen.
Catherine asks, what about your voicemail message? Is it possible that AI could replicate your voice from your outgoing message?
I don't know the answer to that question. That is a very good question. It's hard to say. My first reaction would be I would Google it, honestly. I don't know the answer. I think it's more of a technical computer industry type answer. It's one thing to pull data off of an image or a video. That's something that's physically there. A voice on a phone mail, I'm not sure how they would capture that and what they would do with it. I don't know how good the quality would be and if it is reproducible. So I don't know really the answer to that question.
I do want to go back to capacity trap because I do feel like that's just really a big deal, especially it was interesting. They just remade one of my favorite books, A Man Called Uwe, into A Man Called Otto, and with Tom Hanks. And in it, in the Swedish version, the gentleman has Alzheimer's, and in the American version, he has Parkinson's. And it was very interesting to me, but that suddenly it was like his capacity was being challenged. What are some things you could kind of say, okay, to avoid this trap? Do you start with a power of attorney or talk? Like what can you do to kind of avoid it? Because you know, also sometimes it's just sort of like people hear the diagnosis. And I was actually kind of a little annoyed with the way I felt it was misrepresented in the movie, because I thought, he didn't just get Parkinson's and next thing you know, he's a shell of himself. I'm like, that was, I felt like they didn't really understand Parkinson's, but I feel like a lot of people fall into that trap. And so when you talked about a capacity trap, I thought, interesting use of words, trap. And so could you expand a little bit more about that? I know you said it was complicated. I think it's just important.
Eden, that book and that movie are both on my list of things to do. So be careful with the
movie's
spoiler
really
alerts.
The movie is very good. It definitely had me in tears, but I agree with what you're saying. I'm actually going to have Morgan address this, because the general rule of thumb is half of us are going to lose our ability to make decisions for ourselves for any number of reasons. We could be diagnosed with anything, and it could have a direct impact on our ability to make decisions and our capacity. So our message is, if before you get to that point, you don't have to be diagnosed with something. Before you get to that point, make plans. Make plans that if I walk out of my house today and I get hit by a truck, who's going to make decisions for me? If I didn't make any plans, then all of a sudden people are scurrying to figure. And if I didn't fill out an advanced healthcare directive, now I'm leaving it to my family or the medical team in the hospital to decide, do I go on life support? Do they revive me? What options are available? So my 2 cents on that is, regardless of whether you're diagnosed with anything or it runs in your family, plan. It's good for everybody to have a plan, because half of us will definitely need it. Morgan?
Yeah, I don't know that I have too much to add to that. I think that all the things that we talked about today, so the power of attorney, the advanced healthcare directive, and then the estate planning as far as wills and trusts, these are all those things to do to avoid being in that capacity trap. I think it's like Karen identified, it's not about waiting until it happens, it's do it now. Like everybody should just do it now to have these plans in place. And even like Eden identified, even if there already is a diagnosis, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you can't make these plans. A lot of times, children or younger siblings will come to our office and say, I'm the power of attorney for such and such person, so I am going to make this decision for them. And you have to listen to me because here's my power of attorney. And I say, no, like I still need to talk to the person just because they have this diagnosis. It could have been yesterday and they're completely fine, except for at 11 p.m. at night when everyone else is already tired at that time. So it's very flexible. So that's all we say, make these plans now, have these conversations now. It doesn't matter if there's already a diagnosis, if it's early on, or if there's still moments of clarity. You can still do these things. And I do want to comment on the, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I wanted to comment on the putting your home in a trust question. I did some quick research here, and it looks like this is different from state to state. Generally, I think you can do that. The issue is just then who pays for the mortgage. So if you're still paying for it, great. But if you're placing it in a trust with the mortgage still, you have to designate, is the mortgage going to be paid from your assets, or is it going to be paid from your beneficiary's assets up upon that point of distribution? It also looks like some properties have what's called a due on sale clause, which could be a triggering event to have the whole thing paid if you transfer it into a trust. So that's why I say for questions like this I would really consult either an attorney in your state, or even look back to the actual documents of the real property that you're talking about to see what those clauses are within the mortgage. And then I know there was a question also about power of attorney specific to CalPERS. And this is going to go back to what I said about the example with the banks and having specific powers of attorney dependent on that financial institution. So I would say any agency, organization, institution that's requiring you to have their own power of attorney, you just want to be safe and trust that that particular org, agency, institution, et cetera, is going to honor that power of attorney that you've already drafted. So I know it seems tedious, but better safe than sorry. I would recommend that you fill out additional powers of attorney. Generally, these places, it's because they're making it more specific, and there's not something that's in a general power of attorney that's addressing what they're looking for. So that's the recommendation, is if it's something more specific and they want you to have it in order to honor the person that you're designated to make those decisions, I would go ahead and do that.
I've reached the end of time.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for joining. I know time flies when you're having fun. So thank you so much for joining us. We did put a few links in the chat, so I encourage you to save your chat. If you click on the 3 little dots of your open chat, it'll say more, and you can save your chat that way, because we did put a few little links in that you might want to keep. As always, we have a tradition here at PMD Alliance, our wave of gratitude. Thank you so much, Karen and Morgan. This was excellent and so informative. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
I will also send the PDF of the presentation. The general information, I think, is just excellent for everybody to just remember and act on. Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.